I hope you got this for your recording. Hey, YouTube out there. Tom Rabbit likes to record these. Hey, Tom Rabbit.
And does God will the good because he learns it, or does he will the good because he wills it to be, right? So it's just endless sophistry.
Hey Jay, yeah, I'm here. It's been a while. I've been waiting a while. Yeah, I'll just tell you straight up that yeah, I potentially have a gotcha question. I'm not gonna be coy about it. Like you've expressed that you're unhappy about
I appreciate that much more than the
I mean, that's all this is, right? It's
it.
just like, hey, what's your answer to this, right?
So well, it's an open forum, yeah. So go for it.
So just actually, I don't even know if you for sure hold this position. So depending on position, but I've talked to several presuppositionalists recently, and they all hold to the idea that in order to have intelligibility, God, not necessarily the Christian God, just any concept of God, must have the quality of being always truth revealing. Is that something that you hold to?
Well, first I would say I don't believe that there's a generic concept of God, because the word God is not a rigid designator. It doesn't pick out any specific deity and is used for all kinds of different things. So the word God itself doesn't really tell us much outside of the rest of the system that we're talking about. But I would say that for us, yes, God's own character kind of dictates that, he's not going to do evil. Paul says it's impossible for God to, to lie or to do evil.
Right. So just to be clear, I mean, you're saying that because there seems to be confusion when I ask people this. The particular attribute of being always truth revealing, without that, intelligibility would be logically impossible. Is that correct?
So you're saying that some people have argued that in order to ground truth at all, we need a God who is always truth telling. You're saying that people have made that argument?
No, I'm saying that people are making the claim that in order to have intelligibility, God must have never, ever told a lie, even one, and he must have the attribute of being always truth revealing. Otherwise, it's somehow like logically impossible to have intelligibility.
It's a weird version of this. I don't know if I would make this argument. It's kind of a weird version. I don't know who has made that type of argument. I don't know that I would make this argument. So I would have to think about it.
That's fine.
That's weird.
But just to be clear, you're like at least agnostic that God, we could possibly have the intelligibility we perceive, and God maybe is not always truth revealing. That's not contradictory.
Well, I think God is always truth revealing, and I think that ultimately I would ground truth in God. But it's just a weird, maybe not the best way to make this argument, to say that all knowledge is predicated on God being truth revealing. But maybe in a roundabout way, I would make that argument.
Well,
if you read
not knowledge, intelligibility. So like the ability to interpret or understand.
I know what intelligibility. I mean, it's the two are related. So I'm just intending to express the same idea. So.
Well, some people will go even further and say something. Some people go even further to make an argument that they know that God is always truth revealing because we have intelligibility.
I would say that maybe ultimately that's true. It's a weird way to say it, but yeah, you could probably make that argument.
Yeah, I just don't see why anybody would say that or how they could defend that.
Because intelligibility would require a certain type of world and certain preconditions that lead to God.
And one of those preconditions is that God is always truth revealing.
Yes.
Why? I mean, why is that necessary?
Because we're grounding truth in the person of God. So we go beyond the Platonic, conceptual ideal justification. We're saying that it's not just ideals in the Platonic realm, it's actually God himself. Because again, truth claims require a certain kind of world. And a certain kind of world where you have objective criteria, where you have truth and falsehood, and thus logical laws and universals. And so to have universals requires a certain kind of world.
Yeah. Okay. let me just give a quick example that I use. So example is that someone is crawling on the sun-scorched sand of the Sahara Desert, dying of dehydration, right? And right before they die, God whispers into their ear. And he says that there's an even number of hydrogen atoms in the universe, as opposed to the truth that there's an odd number, right? Now, instantaneously after he tells that lie, right, like this concept of God, halfway around the world in a diner in New York, a man orders a club sandwich. And now, because God told that lie, the waitress can't understand what he's saying. Does that sound right to you?
Well, the analogy is false because it's predicated on a world in which God does lie. And our argument is that God doesn't lie. So, I mean, I'm fine with thought experiments, but it's a thought experiment that's not applicable to
Right.
our
I
worldview.
understand that your position is that the Christian God does not lie, but I'm asking for a conceptual analysis of, like, I'm asking basically for the contradiction where God tells that one lie in that situation, and now the waitress can no longer understand what he's
because
saying.
you're
Why
not
is that the
understanding
case?
that the argument is about the comparison of systems at the paradigm level. It's not about giving a thought experiment example where you could think of a defeater.
Well, it is, because you said that the tag argument is used to compare worldviews.
What did I just say at the beginning? It's not a possible example in our system. So it'd be like saying, what if there's a world where God doesn't exist? Right. This is like JF's example that he gave when I debated JF. He's like, okay, well, about a world where God doesn't exist. See, I came up with a defeater.
Right, exactly. But I mean, that's fine. And I could just say that when you use the tag, right, as you said, you use it oftentimes to say, like, it's true, your worldview is true,
right,
because of the impossibility of the contrary, right?
Right.
So I'm presenting an alternative worldview.
Yeah, it's missing the argument. Right. It's missing the argument. It's not a situation where you just think up whatever. It's a debate about preconditions of knowledge. So one of those preconditions I gave was the possibility of there being truth claims, the possibility of having true knowledge, and those are grounded in things like universal categories and or universals. So your argument, your hypothetical is skirting the actual question of preconditions for knowledge, and it's saying, well, what about a world where God lies?
Yeah, but I'm asking why. It's not just asserted blankly as a precondition, right? You think that there is a logical impossibility. You say,
yes,
my view is true due to the impossibility of the contrary.
Correct.
You bring your worldview to the table, and I'm going to show you the contradiction.
Yeah, you're not giving an actual worldview. You're giving a hypothetical system or example that's impossible in our worldview. So, in other words, if you're going to critique my worldview, it's got to be a critique of what's in my worldview.
Look, I'm asking you to just simply critique or give an explanation of what the contradiction is between a God lying one time and the waitress not understanding an order for a club sandwich.
Well, because it would be a defeater for multiple of his attributes, and therefore there would no longer be a possibility of grounding truth propositions and universals.
So it's just going to seem like it reduces to, like, when you say something like, if God is not always truth revealing, then you can't have intelligibility. That's equivalent to something like, if God is not jealous, then you can't have intelligibility. It's just going to reduce to, like, you can't have intelligibility because that's not God. That's not a quality of God.
It's not. No, you're missing that the argument is about grounding preconditions. Do you understand that or not?
Kind of.
Okay, what do you think I mean by that? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just trying to make sure that you understand the flow of the argument.
Well, you're saying that you need to have God in order to even have knowledge, and these other preconditions.
Okay, so what are preconditions of knowledge?
Well, one of them is always being truth revealing. This is what we're discussing, right?
Okay, but there's a whole bunch of them. So the point is that anything that you say, anybody, presupposes a kind of world. You follow me there or not?
Okay.
So in a world where God lies and tells the truth, there's no longer any clear criteria of truth. Not just arbitrarily, but for grounding the preconditions of truth. So it's not just a question of coming up with a defeater, it's giving an account for the preconditions.
So are you just saying something like, if God lied one time, we wouldn't know possibly whether or not he's telling us the truth, and therefore he must always be truth revealing?
Again, the argument is about grounding the preconditions for knowledge.
That's just an argument from consequence.
No, it's not. It's an argument about the preconditions of all truth and all claims and all knowledge. It's much stronger than that. It's not an argument from consequence. It's saying that to have knowledge at all requires a certain kind of world. Do you understand that? A certain kind of metaphysics, a certain kind of epistemology, a certain kind of ethics.
Yeah, and I'm asking why. Specifically with regards to this one attribute.
Because now we lose the possibility of truth values.
Yeah, but what's the contradiction though?
You're
saying that like it can't possibly be the case because otherwise I might be wrong.
You're not understanding of what I mean by grounding the preconditions. So the preconditions are grounded in God. If God lies, then the preconditions are no longer true.
So walk me through how when God lies about the number of hydrogen atoms in the world.
Because all truth claims and predicates are grounded in universals. Universals are grounded in God. If you take out God, the universals go. Then goes predication. Is that clear enough?
I think so, but I mean, let's say that it's possible for God to even lie, but I mean that wouldn't mean.
Okay, so again, you're importing stupid ass questions that are not possible in the worldview. Do you not understand why that doesn't work?
Well, you were just critiquing the view where he told a lie, and then with the ramifications of that. So you're not.
Do you understand?
Unable to critique this worldview.
It's not an actual worldview. It's a hypothetical situation. You don't understand what worldviews are. Worldviews aren't
a collection of my beliefs and presuppositions, and
it's not a hypothetical that doesn't exist, right? So you're asking me to give an account for a hypothetical that in my system is impossible. So you can't import external to my system things that are impossible in my system.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm just saying that, look, you said the tag argument is used to compare worldviews. I'm presenting a worldview in which this God tells a lie, and you're supposed to tell me how it's... And I just told you why
it doesn't work 4 times in a row. Do you need me to say it again? Truth claims, any truth claim, is grounded in something like, for example, universals. Universals are grounded in God. If God goes, the universals go. And thus the truth claims go. So again, do you need me to say it the 5th time?
Now you're doing the external critique.
No, this is true for anybody's worldview.
Right. So truth in my worldview is just grounded in the same.
You haven't given a worldview because you haven't said what yours is, right? So the only
worldview, I don't really see what that matters.
The only one you presented is the hypothetical that's not your actual worldview. You said, what about one where God lies? Okay,
well, I don't dismiss this worldview.
Okay, I'm giving you an internal critique, and I'm saying that if God lies, then the universals go because they're no longer grounded in a truthful God. And if universals go, all knowledge goes. Do you not see this? This is a very simple point.
No, I don't.
Yeah, exactly.
So now you're able
you want me to explain it for the 6th time?
Right? So just to be clear,
I'm critiquing it on its own grounds.
Now you are critiquing this worldview, which previously you said that
on its own
unable
grounds.
to do. Right.
On its own grounds.
In this worldview, on its own grounds, God lies one time. What's the contradiction with now the waitress?
So for the 6th time, do you want me to explain it for the 6th time? The 6th time, universals underlie all truth claims. All of them. Everywhere. God grounds the universals. If God goes, the universals go. If the universals go,
let's say, the ground...
Again, do you need me to explain it the 7th time?
A sometimes lying God, in this case just once,
do you know what a universal
truth claims, right?
Do you know what a universal is?
I might not know what you mean by it.
So let's move on, because it doesn't matter what I think it is. It's a classic question of philosophy. Good Lord, dude.
Hope you got that for your
These are like the master sophists. It's like they intentionally. How many do I need to? How about the 8th time? Want me to explain the 8th time?
Okay, so for the next caller, let's see. We've got. Let me see. This should be Darth Dawkins on the line. Is that?
Yeah, that's what's on my birth certificate.
Oh, is it?
Well, how's it going?
No, I'm doing fine. I heard you wanted to chat with me.
Yeah, I'm happy that you called in. So I was wondering if you would be willing to talk to us on this show. We talk to people about what they believe and why. So about what you believe as a Christian and why we maybe would want to come along with you, believe in the same stuff.
Well, I'm a fundamentalist Christian. I hold to the Christian worldview, and that it's the only coherent worldview to hold, and any other worldview is not coherent and cannot be defended. Okay, and if you reject the Christian worldview and the self-identity claims of Jesus Christ, you're going to wind up eternally separated from God.
Okay. I mean, that's all pretty straightforward. But I guess what I'm wondering is how could we come with you on that, with believing those things?
Well, you accept God's revelation, both natural and special revelation. Okay, God has revealed himself through creation. He's also revealed himself through the course of history, detailed in the Christian scriptures, and he's preserved them sovereignly. And you have a choice whether to accept that the message of the Christian scriptures, the Christian worldview, is self-attesting, or you will reject it and trade in favor of your autonomous reasoning. Okay?
So you said there's
The only way that you can know that it's true is that you have to. I'm not interested in talking with you. I don't debate trannies. Okay, I'm talking to Ken.
Ooh, ouch. But
Okay.
Darth, I want to talk to you.
Excuse me.
Don't
Yeah,
hurt my
I
feelings.
have a policy. I don't.
Sorry. Nope.
Oh man,
gone.
I was ready.
I'm sorry.
Though.
Arden, no, that's just flat out
That's a-
disrespectful. I wasn't going to let that go.
Well,
Aw.
that's
You want
that's.
to talk, but you're not going to disrespect.
Hang on. That's a missed opportunity. Darth, I hope you call back, because we should address that. Yeah, and something tells me that Arden's more than capable of stepping in and handling.
So
that.
I shouldn't have done that.
I think the sentiment is nice, but I hope Darth calls back.
I mean, it's on him. Like, whatever. If he wants to call me a tranny, that's fine. But I mean, if he can't, he didn't even get to defending his worldview. He just said it's been revealed. I was gonna ask where, but he didn't even want to answer the one question that would demonstrate his point. So, I mean, if he wants to not demonstrate his point to call me a name, then
and
that's
it's an
fine.
interesting.
I'm a grown ass woman. I don't need a schoolyard defense.
Sorry.
It's okay, Ethan.
It's an interesting thing.
Host to be disrespected to that extent.
Well, hang on. I think we've got Darth back on the line.
All right, then
Yes.
This is up to you two. I'm getting out of this.
Yeah. Do we have Darth back?
Oh, was I kicked off?
Yeah, Ethan interjected. And I understand why. So now I feel like I've got to derail the conversation we were having to ask you a different one.
That was not very inclusive.
So,
kicked me off the show,
as-
in my opinion.
So
Aw.
So as a Christian, if you're called to, fulfill the Great Commission, if you believe that Arden, for example, is confused or is living in sin, wouldn't you have a responsibility to talk to her?
I think that individual already knows the gospel and already rejects it. So that person is not in a state of ignorance. Now, we want to get back to the conversation about my worldview that you were.
Well, I
inquiring
actually had a
about, Ken.
question that you could have helped clarify. But
Yeah, I guess you're hard of hearing. I said I'm not going to.
well, actually,
dialogue
literally am.
with somebody
but
pretending
that's
to be a
besides-
female. Okay, so that's the second time I told you my policy. Okay, so Ken, do you want to continue the conversation or not?
I would. I'm just baffled because
Are you
so I was
intimidated?
a Christian for
Hey, do you want to talk about my worldview or not, Ken? Make up your mind.
no. Well, I do,
I was requested to
so-
come onto the show.
So I've muted you now because there's a delay and I don't want us to talk over each other and be rude. So just for the sake of clarity, I was a Christian for more than 20 years. I was under the impression that the fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I don't think I missed any. I think that's all of them. I'm wondering if your mission on the internet is to spread this worldview of Christianity, if you feel like you're doing that in a spirit-led way, would be my question to you as a former Christian, because I'm confused by your tactic, and now you are you're unmuted, so the floor is yours.
Did you mute? Okay, I was told when I was invited to come on the show that I would not be muted. Did you mute me?
I did, yes. I didn't tell you I wasn't going to mute you.
Well, that's violating the terms of the agreement for me to come on the show. Okay, so if you mute me again, I'll disconnect.
Well, if you're going to talk over me, I'll mute you. So that'll be up to you. If you can talk like an adult, then
if you mute me again, I will disconnect. Okay. If you ever talk to me, then I'll leave the call instantly. Okay?
And now you understand. So now you understand
my worldview. Okay.
Yeah. So I asked you a question about your worldview and about being spirit-led.
You can accept the Christian worldview based upon the revelation.
I asked you. Okay. So I'm muting you again. I'm muting you again because I've seen you do this with a lot of people, and I'm not gonna get sucked into the whole ridiculous drama thing. Frankly, this feels like a performance. And he hung up. So yeah. So this is unfortunate. So I mean, I've seen Darth on a number of channels get into these really ridiculous arguments with people, and they go in circles, but I really want to draw attention to what I was asking him, because there's this idea. I was a Christian for a very long time. There's this idea that, they will know we are Christians by our love, was a thing that was said a lot where I grew up. I just listed the fruits of the Spirit. There are a number of requirements that are listed when Paul, especially when he's talking to Timothy, talks about qualifications for people who should have leadership roles in the church. And with as much as I disagree with all of the ridiculous nonsense that's in the Bible, the fruits of the Spirit are actually pretty decent. There's these ideas of how you should conduct yourself towards other people. So there's just like a vitriolic kind of hateful way that Darth presents himself in these conversations that to me seems completely antithetical to everything he's saying. If Christianity is really his thing, and this isn't all some big troll online shtick.
I think the border between those things is probably not very clear. Like, I think there's probably a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. You know what I mean? But I think it's unfortunate because, like, well, yes, I went to Christian school. I had Bible class every day for the first 8 years of my education. I'm not ignorant to the Bible, but I like having philosophical conversations. If he's claiming that there's evidence of creation somewhere that I don't see it, I genuinely want to know. He didn't say what the evidence was. He just said that there is evidence there.
Well, he didn't even
going to ask him what it was.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if we will find out because he couldn't handle a grown-up conversation. But he was going with Revelation. And what I was going to ask him before we got sidetracked by him being transphobic and bigoted and hateful and ridiculous was, if I've got competing claims from people who say they've got Revelation and they disagree with each other, how do we differentiate between their claims to find out who's really onto something? But we'll never get to have that conversation because his head was too far up his ass. So let's move on to Bobby.
Sorry.
Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, Darth, since every single person who called me that in school growing up has told me how they think I'm really hot, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a 50% off deal on my OnlyFans if you
pendulum swing from one opposite to the other, right? With Descartes, you have the preeminent rationalist who wants the most abstract certitude possible and to ground something in the strongest possible incorrigibility, indubitability. And then in response to this, you have people who come along. Again, Hume is, of course, the classic skeptic who says, well, wait a minute. Let's talk about how we actually know things. As far as Hume thinks, knowledge only comes through the five senses. That's it. There's no other reason or basis to believe in knowledge at all beyond just the sense data that's coming in. And so Hume is an attempt to be supremely consistent with the presupposition of the peripatetic axiom.
Yes.
So notice that Hume's starting point is exactly the same as Aristotle's, exactly the same as Aquinas's. But Hume is saying, guys, Aristotle, Aquinas, you guys have not been consistent. You've told me that the peripatetic axiom is that there's nothing in the intellect that's not first in the senses. But then you have violated that by believing in all of these things that you can't show me
Right.
are actually in sense data. Now, this is where people get tripped up, as you know. They think that we're being Humeans or we're being radical skeptics.
Right.
No, the point is to this is about the issue of justification ultimately.
Right.
And justifying a belief means giving a good reason for that belief. That's all we're talking about here. I mean, there's more to it. There's justified true belief and then the Gettier problem and all that. But basically speaking, what we're looking for is good reasons for why we believe what we believe. That's what we are looking for when we talk about grounding or justification for a belief. And Hume is just simply saying that it's time to throw out all these metaphysics books, because it may be the case that all the metaphysics are correct, but I want to know how you're epistemically justified in making those claims, those leaps, those beliefs.
Right.
That's the point here.
And
It's
on
not
the basis of empiricism, you cannot do that. It's impossible.
so if our knowledge is limited to sense data, Hume's saying I'm going to be consistent with that and call out all of the history of philosophy, which has violated that by importing all of these things that are not actually in sense data. And so the classic example, as you pointed out, is the problem of induction, or causality is also one that's mentioned. And these are just simply to say that induction is that the future will be like the past. It's the process of, for example, science reasoning from the particular to general conclusions.
Right.
And there's an unjustified leap there, because as a finite empirical being, you never have access to this universal state of affairs.
Right.
So you're never justified in going from particular to the universal claim.
Right.
And so you're always stuck in the particular, and then it's always thus a kind of skepticism. And so this is where Hume gets into his arguments about how, you don't actually have a basis to believe that the sun will rise tomorrow, because you can't just appeal to the fact that it rose in the past.
Exactly. And we'll see that Bertrand Russell, in the article that you were referencing, he makes this appeal. Well, we can just assume based on past experience that the future has been like the past, but this becomes circular in and of itself. And we'll get to this when we get into the 20th century.
Right. So Hume also raises other important questions, like you said, like that we can't justify belief in things like causality, because when you see event A and event B happening, one billiard ball hitting another billiard ball, you're calling that the principle of causation, but there's no actual basis to say that the sense data is actually showing you the principle of causation itself.
Right.
You're just observing event A followed by event B, and you're calling that causation, but that doesn't give you a justification for the universal principle of, quote, causation. And so Hume just kind of does this same move in a lot of different areas, the identity of objects over time, right? I mean, you're saying that I'm the same Jay today as I was when I was a baby, but what's the actual empirical basis to believe that? What's the empirical basis to believe in the past? What's the empirical basis to believe in memory, right? That our memory is accurate or something like that. So you could raise a series of questions that are Humean types of questions that lead us to a difficult boxed in position of radical skepticism, on the basis of saying that if our starting point for our system, if our foundation for our belief system is classical foundationalism or empiricism, we're going to be stuck in these dead end boxes, because we may believe all kinds of things that happen to be true, but the problem is that we don't have good reasons to believe them. So this is where you could say from the time of Aristotle to Aquinas or up to Descartes, it's basically a foundationalist model that's at work in almost everybody. Yep. And then from Descartes up on, all of modern philosophy shifts to questions about epistemology. And by the time of the 20th century, epistemology will die.
Yeah.
Now, I don't believe that it's actually dead.
Right.
But on these secular approaches, it is dead. It will critique and destroy itself such that it will have no basis for its own claims. And that's where W.V.O. Quine will come into play, because Quine will basically just point out that epistemology really hasn't done anything or moved or advanced since Hume.
Right.
It's basically been dead since Hume. And, his famous paper basically says that all we're doing now is psychology. We have to really just surrender the discipline of epistemology. So that's the end goal. And that's why we're going to point out eventually, as you said, that argumentation is ultimately in a way circular. And that's why foundationalism is going to be a dead-end enterprise and will not work. And many modern epistemologists concede this, right? It's not just Quine. I mean, the Mannion paper mentions 4 or 5 modern epistemologists,
absolutely
secular academics who essentially admit that
pragmatism gains its move at the end of the 19th century and into the 20th century, and that really is the philosophical enterprise of America itself. And so that's why we're doing this talk, because for so many people who don't know what you're talking about when we're talking about all this foundationalism, is that the history of philosophy gets to the 20th century, and it's, again, as you're saying, it's focused on epistemology this whole time. Then it says, well, looks like we can't make any single epistemological claims without being circular. And really it opens up then traditional metaphysics in regards to theistic interpretation. So when you do your apologetics, you're actually at the forefront of the philosophical conversation going back to Aristotle. It's just people don't understand this when they're talking to you about it.
Right. Yeah, and I think we should mention too a couple other kind of attempts of rescue that have been had in the history of philosophy for these positions. I mean, if you have the Bonjour text, which is epistemology that Father Deacon Ananias recommends, the Bonjour text.
Not familiar.
There's some really good sections where he mentions weak foundationalism. So somebody might say, well, maybe this Cartesian approach is not going to work. But what about something else that's maybe not as tall an order or a higher request to have indubitable certitude? Maybe we can have a weak foundationalism, which doesn't require indubitable certitude, but enters into probabilities. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we don't have to go too deep into this, but the idea that probabilities can function as justifications for beliefs is not going to work, because again, we're going to be confronted with arbitrariness. Because if we start to say that, well, we're justified in believing X if it has 90% probability, I mean, it's just kind of silly, actually, if you think about it. 80%, I mean, it's arbitrary. Like, what percentage? Because when you enter into probabilities, you're bringing in numbers, right? And percentages. Like, there's no clear idea as to what percentage of a belief being probably false or correct tells you that it's justified. It's, again, it just becomes an exercise in arbitrariness, which was the original critique that we had of foundationalism. And there's another really important point to add about foundationalism, that the crux of the problem here, and this is not just for this would apply to strong or weak foundationalists, which is that in order to have a starting point of a justified belief, we have to, from the outset, already have a notion of our criteria of justification. But that's the thing that's in question, is what is the criteria of justification? And so there's this just seemingly insurmountable problem that, as Mannion points out, I'll phrase it the way he phrased it because it's really good. He says, we must determine our criteria of justification prior to determining our criteria of justification.
Right.
And that circularity is not going to go away when we try to move into these other schools or these other secular approaches. Even coherence theory will have insights about how our beliefs work as more like a web or a network. But even that will actually be another form of foundationalism. I'm talking about secular coherence theory, right? Now, that's another mistake a lot of people make, is they hear somebody say that our beliefs have to be coherent, or that we have insights from coherence theory. They'll say, oh, well, then you're a secular coherence theorist. And
welcome. I am Chris, first disciple of God Getty, and host of the God Getty Show. And my co-host is Sheeps. This episode, I want to show and tell you about my first God Getty hat. You can visit the God Getty website to learn more about why you might want a God Getty hat of your own. I'm going to tell you about mine. I also have a video there where I've showed you how to make this hat. Now, for me, the God Getty hat, I put things on the God Getty hat that are in my Schrodinger's box. And there's more information about that in my other videos, but I will tell you what these things mean to me and why they're in my Schrodinger's box. First, in the very center in the front, most important, is my heritage religion. This is a Judeo-Christian cross. Well, it's more just Christian, less Judeo, because it, is the cross that Christ was put on. And I was raised as a fundamentalist Christian in the Midwest, and I was saved. And this stuff is very important to me. It's in my Schrodinger's box. It's my heritage religion. This is a psychedelic mushroom. I love nature, and I think it's really cool that there's certain plants that make compounds that alter my brain, and that humans make compounds that alter plants, and how that's all interconnected. This snake represents the story from the Garden of Eden, where humans acquired the knowledge of good and evil. That for me, that kind of means that us humans, like, if we understand that if we're going to do something and it hurts somebody, then we're more responsible to not do that and think about it than, say, maybe an ant or a chipmunk. I mean, I don't really know, but that's what I believe. This is an LGBTQ plus rainbow. It's a complicated time for LGBTQ. And there's some conflicting beliefs between this and my heritage religion. So this is in my Schrodinger's box. I support LGBTQ+. These two puzzle pieces, that's because for me, the puzzle pieces have to fit. Things need to work. They need to make sense. Like, as an example, the Bible portrays slavery as being God's will. And the Bible also portrays that Jesus said to love your neighbor as yourself. And it's really hard to, like, think that it was ever okay for one man to own another man forever. So I reject that. Anyway, this is world peace. World peace is really important to me, but I got to jump over here. This is an American flag. I love America. America is the greatest country in the world, and I am super grateful to the veterans that made sacrifices so that I have freedom of speech, freedom of religion. I get to make this video and tell you about something that's important to me because of the sacrifices that veterans have made to improve our lives. Thank you. America is the greatest country in the world. Also, in order for us to have world peace, I think there also needs to be other countries that are the greatest country in the world. We should have lots of greatest countries in the world. Here's God Getty. G-O-D, G-E-T-T-I. And there's the official website is just godgetty.com if you want to learn more. Here's a yin-yang symbol. I've always kind of liked yin-yang. I don't know anything about the religion really, but there's like a little bit of evil and good and a little bit of good and evil, and they balance each other out. That was always meaningful and interesting to me. Here's gears. This represents the importance to me of like science and math. It's the closest thing I could find right now. I plan on making another one of these out of like using actual brass inlays, spend more time on it, do some old metalworking techniques. But this is my first hat. And, you know, obviously making a God Getty hat is a personal experience. What's on it is about you and what's in your Schrodinger's box. Yours is going to be different than mine. Everyone's is different. Oh yeah, the extraterrestrial. So that's because I certainly believe it's possible that there's life outside of Earth. Extraterrestrial means not of this Earth. And as a funny side note, you know, I guess technically most Christians believe in extraterrestrial life because God and Jesus are not of this Earth. They would be aliens. Oh, I forgot to tell the funny story about the snake too. You know, according to the Bible, Satan appeared as a serpent, and then God, to punish, Satan or the serpent? I don't understand. Took his legs off so that the snake, and all the other snakes have to wallow around on their bellies forever and ever. all because Satan took the form of a snake when he appeared to Eve. Like, as far as I know, the snake didn't volunteer. It's like totally not cool. On the other hand, I do like snakes. I do think they're cool. They're interesting. I don't know that it's really a curse that they get to slither on the ground, because, you know, they can do a lot of cool things. So go watch some nature videos about snakes. They're amazing. Alrighty, well, that's it for this episode. Sheeps, you got anything to add? Not today? Maybe next time? Alright, see you guys next time.
This is Duncan from Texas, and you wanted to ask us. Hey, how's it going? I have a note here saying you wanted to ask us for the basis of our belief in atheism. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what the rational basis for atheism is, whether you define it as the denial of the existence of God or lack of belief. If you lack belief in God, what is it then that ultimately exists that would tie everything together and be a basis for rationality? What would be the impersonal ultimate that would exist that would replace God?
Well, this isn't Matt Slick, is it?
No.
Okay. So
I'm not.
Sorry, say again.
I said I'm not Matt Slick.
Okay, cool. Just making sure. Because if you are, then lying is a sin. I'll just let you know.
I'm not. I'm not.
Do you know who Matt Slick is?
Yeah, I've seen him on YouTube many times.
Okay. Well, I think that's an interesting question. I don't know if atheism is the rationality or the basis for my rationality. I think if it was, then I'd have to justify that, but it's not. So
No. Well, what ultimately exists? Since you lack belief in God, you must have a belief that something is ultimate or absolute.
Why do I need to?
Why?
Why do I need to have a belief in something ultimate?
Well, then what would be the basis for your belief in any states of affairs, including reason? What prerequisites would exist for your capacity to reason or have epistemology?
I don't know if I need a prerequisite for reason. I think everyone has it. I mean, obviously reason.
Your brain isn't the prerequisite for reason?
Well, I mean, I need a brain to reason things. Yeah.
And does your brain operate in terms of causality and laws of nature, and do they exist?
From what I can observe. Yeah.
Can you observe causality?
Can I observe causality? I can observe events happening and then other events happening.
Right, but I'm just saying the causal principle.
What do you mean?
You observe that there are causal relations between events? Because if you can't account for causality, then how are you going to account for reason? Since you require justification for God, then if matter, energy, causality, and laws of nature replace God as the basis for you to reason, how do you account for causality and laws of nature? Because you can't appeal to sense perception, because that.
Why do I have to account? Are you saying account as in I have to prove that causes exist? Because
is causality and laws of nature a prerequisite to reason and have epistemology?
You do realize laws of nature were made by our reason. They describe how things work.
Yeah, I'm saying, do they exist?
They're descriptions of how things work.
Okay, but are there laws of nature and are there causal connections between events that would be a prerequisite for your capacity to reason and have epistemology?
There are descriptions for how things work that we came up with our reason and our intellects to describe the world in which we live. I don't see why we have to have a precept ultimate source of any of this. Atheism is the answer to a single question.
Yeah, but when you have your atheism, you lack belief in God because God's not rationally justified, right?
I don't have atheism. That I am an atheist, but that's the answer to a single question.
You lack belief in God. You lack belief in God through the process of reason. What ultimately exists that provides for your capacity to reason? Is it laws of nature?
I don't.
You have
So
blind faith?
well, faith. I mean, I think that's an equivocation because I'm using reason to come to my conclusions.
Oh, I understand that you're using reason.
Yeah.
I'm just simply saying to you, how do you account for the prerequisites that you are reasoning?
How do I account that well, okay, so I think are you trying to say how do I account that my reasoning is accurate?
Yeah, I just want to see if you actually have a reliable method to be able to reason. Do the prerequisites for reason exist in order for...
are there like axioms that I accept? Maybe. Is that what you're asking?
Are those axioms adopted by blind faith, or are they have a justification?
Yeah, so it depends because I think different people adopt different axioms depending on what kind of atheist you ask.
Well, what about you? Are your most bottom basic beliefs adopted by blind faith about the nature of reality, or do you have a justification for it? Because you insist that God has to have a rational justification, right?
To hold a belief in God, not necessarily that God exists. It's two different things, in my opinion. Because I don't know ultimate truth or whatever. I know how to justify my beliefs in order to accurately accommodate them with reality, at least the reality that I perceive it. So
the prerequisites for reason, such as causality and laws of nature, do exist?
The prerequisites, okay, that's a lot. Okay, can you repeat that a little more slowly so that I can understand?
Do the prerequisites of reason, such as causality and laws of nature, actually exist in order for you to be able to reason and have epistemology?
I mean, we observe them through reason. So, I don't know.
Reason is not sense perception.
Yeah, but we have to reason that they exist through our observations.
Well, you can't appeal to sense perception to justify causality and laws of nature, because sense perception entails causality and laws of nature in order to be a meaningful concept. That would be begging the question. So you can't appeal to something that presupposes causality and laws of nature in order to justify laws of nature. So as an atheist, since you lack belief in God, you must believe in something that ultimately exists that makes God unnecessary, such as matter, energy, causality, and laws of nature. So what's your justification?
No.
Disagree.
And is this Darth Dawkins?
I do use that name, yes.
There you go.
Yes, that's what I thought.
Yeah, do you have a justification for that, gentlemen?
I disagree with the premise.
Yeah, the premises are garbage.
You disagree that reason has the prerequisites of causality and laws of nature?
I think you don't understand what laws of nature are.
Okay, well, the question I'm asking you, gentlemen, is since reason requires certain prerequisites that nature operate in a certain way, otherwise you wouldn't have the capacity to reason.
They don't require that they don't. We know the reason why we can justify that they do is because we're using reason. Okay,
yes.
we don't, accept that to be true a priori. We're having to use our reason to come to those conclusions. I think you're getting it backwards. You can't call that a prerequisite because we're using reason to figure that out.
By our reason, we describe how things happen, and we call those the laws of nature.
Yeah, they're descriptions that we use our reason for.
Right.
If our observations told us something else, that there weren't causes, that things just happened randomly, then we would.
How do you know things aren't happening randomly?
Well, my sense perceptions don't tell me that they are.
No, you can't. You see, you wouldn't be able to. How would you be able to distinguish between a random chance world where events are spontaneous, producing the same kinds of consistency as necessity? How would you be able to know the difference?
What would be the difference?
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking you.
No, I'm saying, like, even if it was random and everything worked exactly the same way it is, then what does random even mean?
Well, if all events were random and spontaneous, would you have the capacity to reason? No. So you must presuppose there's laws of nature and causality. Do you have?
No, I would have to presuppose.
No, because how did you figure that out? You used your reason to figure that out. So you're using reason to do that. There's no.
I'm just asking how you account for it.
That's how I account for it. I use my reason.
Yes, we use our reason.
Yeah.
Right. So you're saying I reason, therefore I reason?
No.
Is that what you're saying?
No.
When did I say that? No.
I'm asking you.
What does that even mean?
So what I'm asking you is reason has prerequisites.
No.
If God.
No, it doesn't.
God, can I finish my statement, please? If you lack belief in God as the ultimate prerequisite for reason, then something else must ultimately exist, such as matter, energy, causality, and laws of nature, to provide a foundation for you to have reason and epistemology. And I want to see if you can account for the prerequisites of your claim to reason.
Okay.
Can you justify that there are laws of nature?
First of all, God is not a reason for reasons. It doesn't.
And once
there's
in certain worldviews, God would be
no. The existence of a God does not confirm that you know things about reality. In no way does that make sense. You know
what I'm simply saying is in certain models of worldview, such as the Christian worldview, which I hold to, God would be the ultimacy of reality, which is the ultimate prerequisite for everything, including reason. Since you lack belief,
are you a reformed epistemologist, or are you just a typical, like, what is your?
I'm a Bible believing Christian, sir. Now,
he's an internet.
I'm sure. No, well, what your specific worldview though, because there's like millions and millions of millions and millions of Christians that disagree with what you just said.
I'm a Bible believing Christian. I believe that the Bible is literal from Genesis to Revelation. Now, can I get back to my question?
Well, because Christianity.
Can I get back? Yeah, I understand that, but my question is about how do you account for your capacity to?
And I gave you my reason, and you have rejected it.
May I finish my question? In your worldview, something must ultimately exist as a foundation and a prerequisite that provides the correct.
So this is the fifth time you've said this, and again, I reject your premise.
Yes.
What do you?
No.
My answer is null.
So there's no ultimate. Oh, there's no absolute in existence that provides a foundation for reason.
No absolute. I don't know what that means.
How would we know what an absolute is?
We don't have the ability to tell.
Let me put it this way. I'm sure you agree that all assertions or propositions require context. So when you make assertions about reason, what's the ultimate or absolute context of reality that provides the meaning for your capacity to assert
don't
reason?
Have one. No. Nobody has that ability.
If you don't have one, then how do you know you can reason?
No, it's not that I don't know I can reason. See, that's where you messed up. Okay. I never said I couldn't reason. My reasoning could be faulty, but that doesn't mean I can't reason. You see the difference? I could reason false conclusions. I could, that is possible, but you can't say I can't.
Dan, can I just tell you something? This is Darth Dawkins.
I know
he has been trying for
I'm aware.
months to get on my channel with me in a chat for just this reason. It never gets better.
I'm not sure what you're even talking about trying to get on your channel. What are you referring to, sir?
You have been in my chat countless times asking to join.
I'm not sure what you're referring to. I sent you one message, I think, asking if you wanted to have a dialogue. Just one message, sir.
No.
How does one message equal countless times?
My reason.
I sent you one direct message, sir.
All right. Well, regardless.
Anyway, but that's changing the subject. So the point on what I want to say is, since you lack belief in God, if you have no foundation in terms of your worldview,
I do have a foundation.
Then how is your reason meaningful?
I do have a foundation.
What is it?
Why are you saying that I don't? I do.
What is it?
My sensory perceptions of the world and my reasoning abilities are my foundation. No, they're not ultimate. They're not ultimate, and I'm not making the claim that they are.
No.
Sensory.
I don't need ultimate.
Not be the ultimate foundation. You're going to need a bottom level foundation about what the nature of existence is in order to claim that you can have possession of reason. And what is it?
No, because first of all, you're assuming I'd have to have a foundation in order to come to that conclusion anyway. So it kind of defeats the purpose.
So do you believe in that foundation that provides you the capacity to reason by faith or by evidence?
Gosh, we've gone through this several times, and I've seen you talk about this with other people. I'm not really interested in having this conversation because I don't think that it's meaningful, and I don't think it's simple either.
It's not.
I think that this is.
Why? Because you can't answer the question. Do you use?
No, actually, I've answered it several times, and other people have answered as well.
Well, is it by blind faith or by evidence that the foundation is there? And what is that foundation?
It's by neither. I've already told you it's my sensory experiences and my reason that I make claims about my perception of reality.
Are not your sensory apparatus, are they not contingent upon prerequisites?
Okay, so we kind of talked about this before, but I'm interested in what you mean by prerequisites. So you're saying that I have to assume a priori that the world works in specific causes. I think is what you're. Which I disagree. I think that I can still use my reasoning abilities, and I would still be able to tell, because we can tell things about supposedly there are quantum events that happen that don't happen on a cause effect basis, and we're using our reasoning to come to those conclusions that might be the case.
Not really addressing my question. What I'm getting at is what is it that exists that provides for the capacity to reason? Is it the way nature operates? Does nature, the way it operates, provide the foundation for you to reason about anything as an atheist? And is the way nature operates, is that causality and laws of nature? Is that what exists as the foundation?
Those aren't my foundations. Okay, thank you for calling. I really do appreciate you calling. And maybe
so you don't want to answer the question, huh?
I've answered the question several times, and I have other callers that I like to talk to because we're going around in circles.
I haven't answered the question. You've just talked around it. You haven't answered it in the least. But I would understand.
How many, Darth? How many times have I told you what my foundations are?
You did. I didn't hear what your foundation is.
You didn't hear my Hey, Godless Iwan, what are my foundations? Please tell me, as I know you heard.
You said it was sense perception, but sense perception.
Yes, okay, so you did hear. Okay, so you lied. Okay, so there's one. No, you did actually hear what I said. What you meant to say was it wasn't a satisfactory answer for you because it didn't go through your routes of conversation that you've already had planned out. Okay, I'm done with this conversation. Thank you for calling, Darth. Have a nice day.
But you want to sit there and talk like a little girl, okay, which you're not. Let's hear your real voice.
Well, okay, this is my real voice.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. If you're born a male, okay, I want to ask you a question.
Dude, I was on hormone blockers.
Okay, listen to me. Were you castrated when you were younger?
Transgender.
That's not an answer to my question. Yeah. If you're going to give me another snarky answer, then the conversation is going to be over with you because you're just.
Okay, I'm sorry, but it's like I just can't take you seriously. Sometimes it's like you're like, wait.
I'm asking you what your model of reality is. Are you atheist? Are you a theist?
Like
okay, mute her. Do me a favor, mute her. Okay, she's an absolute imbecile. She's wasting our time.
Okay.
I've actually talked to Stacy before, and she was like doing these like crazy like hand signs, like.
All right, we're done with her. Yeah, she's a waste of time.
Well, it's actually a him, so I kind of feel.
Oh, it's a dude?
Yes, it's a dude.
Hey, why'd you say it?
Oh, so it's what we're talking to is a transvestite.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, Stacy's muted. It's under control.
So what we have here is somebody who is at the
there's no way that's a dude
about their
it is a dude.
selves before God.
We should go to the atheist.
No, a dude doesn't sound like.
We should probably go to the atheist helpline.
I've talked to this person in my server before. Yeah, let's go to atheist helpline.
Yeah, that way we have more control, or Darth has more control.
That wasn't a dude. That was a female just claiming to be a transgender.
Well, hey, listen, with practice, I can make myself sound like Bernie Sanders. I'm a democratic socialist for president. Vote for Joe Biden. You know, with practice, you can do that sort of thing. Yeah, it's perverted, isn't it? Well, either way, it's perverted.
Oh yeah. I'll sound dumb. It's 2020. Do you not understand how transgender medicine works and what they can do now?
Well, if whatever they're doing is not working for Caitlyn Jenner still sounds like Bruce Jenner.
I love that meme where Bruce Jenner is in drag on a couch, and his dog is in the foreground of the camera, looking confused, and the caption says, "I'm so confused. I still smell balls."
Oh, fuck. That is.
You know
I can't get
what
that
was
image
really
out of my head,
repulsive?
man.
You know what was really repulsive? I remember a couple years ago when that happened. Hold on, give me a second. I remember several years ago when that catastrophe, showed itself to us. I'd go to the supermarket a couple of times a week, and I would have to avert my head having to look at that train wreck on all the magazine covers. That's exactly what I want to see when I'm buying food, right? Some transvestite.
Yeah, I remember that when he was going through the procedure, they had that. It was before he came out and said that he was transitioning, and they had all the photos saying, "Oh, he's secretly transitioning." It was really weird.
I think Caitlyn is stunning.
Yeah, listen, you're not gonna troll in here. Last warning, okay?
I wasn't trolling though. I'm being honest.
Okay, bye.
If he calls you a
Pumpkin.
troll, you are a troll. There's no arguing. That's one thing you don't want to get yourself on. It's the Darth Dawkins troll list.
I used to be a troll with a lowercase t, but apparently I'm an uppercase t now.
I used to be a troll before I came to God. A lot more than I am now.
I don't think there's anything wrong with trolling. I like to troll the atheist servers.
Maybe let her listen. Maybe she'll learn something.
No, she or it, the deranged little mind it has can stay and listen. There are different levels of trolling, okay?
As for transgender people,
no. Homosexuality was removed as a mental disorder in 1973 through the political posturing of one man who years later we found out that he was a promoter of pedophilia. But he successfully lobbied the American Psychiatric Association to remove homosexuality from its list of mental disorders.
okay. Well,
So you don't know what you're talking
okay.
about.
Well, I mean, it isn't considered a mental disorder now. And as for
it's very simple.
Yeah, and because of political winds of change, not because of science.
Well, can I
political
postulate
posturing.
my theory as to why it's changed and like why society is progressing?
Progress.
That's a value judgment.
Okay. So basically what my belief is that gender dysphoria is a mental disorder, and I think what people get mixed up here is that they think because I'm a boy who thinks I'm a girl, that's what makes me mentally ill. But no, that's not actually the case. What makes it
I'm going to ask you a question. When you were born, what was put on your birth certificate?
Male.
Okay, so you're a transvestite or a tranny.
Well, that's not the accurate term. The accurate term is
good. Yeah, well, I'm not going to debate with you. You're in a stage of utter delusion, but it's self-imposed because you're in rebellion against God. Okay, God made human beings either male or female. You are choosing to rebel against God first and foremost by not acknowledging God as God. Number two, not by you thankful for Him, and you are rejecting His purposes and design for human creation. That we have the distinctive of male and female, okay? And you are rebelling against that, and you are in grave danger in terms of your eternal destiny because you are in a state of self-imposed delusion.
I mean, I don't think I'm delusional, considering that I went to multiple doctors.
Of course, you know how I know you're delusional? You want to know how I know you're delusional? Okay, people who are delusional, a lot of times they're simply not aware that they're delusional because they've given in so much to their fantasizing and their faulty reasoning that they believe what they want to believe. You know how you're delusional? Is because anything that disagrees with the mind of God and how he has revealed it is a delusion. It is fiction. Since your belief about yourself, okay, you were born a male, all right, but you want to sit there and talk like a little girl, okay, which you're not. Let's hear your real voice.
Well, okay, this is my real voice.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. If you're born a male, okay, I want to ask you a question.
Dude, I was on hormone blockers.
Okay, listen to me. Listen to me. Were you castrated when you were younger?
No,
Did your testicles develop properly?
No, actually, I'm also actually intersex.
Okay, well, there is no such thing as intersex. Okay,
well, it does.
Your chromosomes are either XX or XY.
They're XXY.
Yeah. I've got news for you. It doesn't matter that you have an extra chromosome, because even those people who have a genetic defect are still distinctly male or female.
True.
In spite of their chromosomal disorder. Okay, so you're deluding yourself. The bottom line is, the only way to know that you're not deluded is to compare your thoughts about reality compared to how God has revealed it. Otherwise, anything goes. You have no standard or ground to believe anything.
I'm living to what represents my own personal truth. I've never felt comfortable living
that is the essence of Satanism, my friend.
Well, maybe I might be Satanist.
No, that's right. You are deciding for yourself. The essence of Satanism is what is called human autonomy. That the mind of man, of the individual, will determine by itself what the nature of reality is, thereby having a metaphysical landscape overtalk me again, and I'm going to silence you. Now, you are advocating autonomy. Okay, and I'm trying to explain to you why this is satanic. Okay, because there's only two ways of thinking in this world. Only two. Okay, either your mind and your beliefs and your will are in submission to the natural and special revelation of God, or you will be deciding for yourself, apart from God's revelatory actions, what the nature of reality is and the frame of reference by which you will interpret facts. Now, why is that satanic? Because Satan does not want people to submit their minds, their wills, and their thinking to the mind of God and how he reveals it. He wants people to decide for themselves whatever they want. That is delusional. That is a form of insanity. In other words, you will decide for yourself, okay, independent of how God has created this world, what the nature of reality is. But you couldn't possibly do that. That's insane.
The way Stacy thinks is a permutation of postmodernism.
Can I just say what I believe? Because I really wanted to say my piece.
Stacey, are you into the occult?
Yes.
Okay. Why am I not surprised? This is another facet of being deluded. Human beings. Listen carefully. Right? Human beings are no match to the deceptive capability of demonic spirits. They will not come to you as demonic spirits, okay? But you are no match for their deceptions. They have had millennia to study human beings and how to deceive people. And the Bible makes it very clear that each one of us, those people who are not in submission to God, are drawn away. We are tempted by our own desires. Bible talks about we collect for ourselves teachers according to our itching ears. In other words, we get drawn away by what we want to believe. And that's precisely the situation you're in. And the only way to secure yourself from away from eternal damnation, you need to repent. You need to turn back to God and to Jesus Christ.
Okay. So, I mean, that's all like fine and dandy. What I want to say is with gender dysphoria, it is a mental disorder. And the treatment for that mental disorder, as recognized by every major medical organization, is therapy to help analyze your thoughts and what you're going through, as well as transitioning to the gender that you identify with and that makes you most comfortable.
Yeah.
So is the efficacy of this treatment better or worse than the efficacy of seeking Christ? Have you ever looked at a study that compared the two things?
I mean, I doubt any person in academia would study Jesus.
Exactly.
Okay, I mean, are we gonna like how would you even study that? Like, what would you do?
Oh, it'd be
Like,
very easy. You
okay,
the
in this
same.
control
Hold on.
group, we're
It's
gonna have
very
Jesus.
easy from an
Wait, can I
empiricist standpoint.
can I ask you
You asked the
can I
question.
finish my
It's very
question?
easy.
Well, I want to
Self-reported
finish my
diagnostics,
question so
the
you can
same as
better answer it.
psychology and therapy does.
Well, can I ask my question fully so you can better answer it? Okay. Like, how would you even test that? Would it be, oh, in this control group, we're going to call Jesus Christ, Christ Almighty. We're going to read these people Bible scriptures and ask the Holy Ghost to fill their bodies. And then in this group, we're going to have them transition. Like, I don't
Yep.
understand. How would that study go?
Exactly like that. Exactly like that. You've detailed it
Oh,
perfectly.
well, I mean,
What do you mean what?
I mean, if it worked, maybe we would have done it.
Well, no, there's no evidence that it doesn't work. You're just writing off before you've investigated. There's a quote that says, "Nothing will keep man in so
I mean, personally,
everlasting
I'm
ignorance
happy.
as contempt
So,
prior to investigation." And that's what you're doing. You're saying, "Oh, that's Jesus. I hate Jesus. No way. No
well, I
way
don't
could
hate
God
Jesus.
ever fit into my
I
empiricist
don't hate
worldview."
Jesus.
But you haven't investigated. You won't even
Well,
investigate it with your own worldview, much less
but
the
when did
true
I say I
worldview
hated
of God's.
Jesus? I never hated Jesus.
No, the Bible says that you hate God. Romans 1.
Well, I don't hate God.
But you do.
But why? Because I'm transgender?
Romans
Like, I
1.
don't understand.
Yeah, because you suppress the truth of the knowledge of God.
So Romans 1 says, I hate God because I'm
Yep.
if you're transgender, you hate God. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's more like this. All men know that God are true. All men are depraved, and as a result, God and so they suppress the truth of the knowledge of God. As a result, three things happen. God hardens their hearts. He hardens their mind, and He hardens
Oh, so you're
their
saying I'm a
actions
reprobate. Okay.
unto reprobation. Yes.
Okay. So I'm too far gone. So why should I even care then?
I didn't say you're too far gone.
I mean, that's what you're kind of saying.
No, I'm saying that your action now is a result of your suppressing the truth of God.
Well, I
So you
shouldn't
have
say
to
that I
stop
am
suppressing
depraved,
the
but I'm
truth about
depraved in a
God,
lot of
repent, turn
ways.
towards Him, bury your face in the ground, beg the Holy Spirit to take out your heart of stone, replace it with the heart of flesh, and supernaturally regenerate you so that you can see the truth of God and stop suppressing it.
So how do we do that? Do I just like
I just said you bury your
no,
face in the ground, beg the Lord
no,
Jesus
do
Christ to send the Holy
kumbaya
Spirit
and
to. No, it's not kumbaya. It's the opposite of kumbaya. You bury your face before the Lord.
You
beg
see,
Him
you
for the
see,
Holy Spirit.
you know what? I'm not putting up with this anymore with this fake giggling. Okay.
I'm not
Okay. Bye. Listen. You've been warned.
I'll
You're
stop
facing
giggling.
eternal damnation. See you later. Okay. See this fake giggling here. Okay. This is a perfect example of what we call a reprobate mind. That's what you saw on full display right there, a reprobate mind. Somebody who is in such full rebellion against God that they believe that they are something, whatever they desperately want to believe they are. I mean, it doesn't get any more reprobate than that.
That giggle is just full on satanic. I mean, you're like, I'm depraved.
Yeah, it's a performance. It's an act.
Laughing at what?
The little girly giggling.
Oh, thought we were talking about like some world event or some shit like that.
No, there's some male who's a tranny.
Or are we talking about that person that was here like 30 seconds ago or like 20 minutes ago?
Yeah, that yes.
They still here?
No, I ejected him. I had enough.
What
we should tell these people is that we're all aliens.
And so I don't simply believe there is a God. I've come to know Him and trust Him. And I have strong reasons for doing so.
John Lennox is a scientist, mathematician, and Christian apologist. In 2012, he was at Oxford University, where he logically defended the Christian faith and exposed the many unreasonable tenets of atheism. This was one of the most brilliant displays of logic and arguments for God in Christianity. What people are missing is that Richard Dawkins, one of the most notable atheists and opponents of Christianity, was sitting in the audience.
I believe in God. I believe in the supernatural God who created the heavens and the earth. I believe in a God who holds the heavens and the earth in existence. I believe that on the basis of rational evidence, similar to the beliefs held by the founders of this house, who gave this university the motto, Dominus Illuminatio Mea. They saw no contradiction between faith in God and the utmost excellence in rational inquiry. And if I dare mention my alma mater of Cambridge in this holy place, I would remind you that on the door of the Cavendish Laboratory in Cambridge are written the words, "Great are the works of the Lord, studied by all who delight in them." And as we look at the rise of science in the 16th and 17th centuries, Alfred North Whitehead and many others commented that men became scientific because they expected law in nature, and they expected law in nature because they believed in a lawgiver. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not ashamed of being both a scientist and a Christian, because arguably Christianity gave me my subject. What I am amazed at is that serious thinkers today continue to ask us to choose between God and science. That's like asking people to choose between Henry Ford and engineering as an explanation of the motor car. When Newton discovered his law of gravity, he didn't say, "I've got a law, I don't need God." No, he wrote the Principia Mathematica, arguably the greatest work in the whole history of science, because he saw that God is not the same kind of explanation as a scientific explanation. God doesn't compete. Agency does not compete with mechanism and law. Why is there something rather than nothing? Alan Sandage, the brilliant cosmologist who became a Christian in his 50s, said God is the answer to that question. But people are now so desperate to show that the universe created itself from nothing, which seems to me to be an immediate oxymoron. If I say X created Y, I'm assuming the existence of X to explain the existence of Y. If I say X created X, I'm assuming the existence of X to explain the existence of X, which simply shows that nonsense remains nonsense even if high-powered scientists utter it. It reminds me a little bit of G.K. Chesterton, who said, "It is absurd to complain that it is unthinkable for an unthinkable God to make everything out of nothing, and then to pretend that it is more thinkable that nothing should turn itself into everything." The heavens declare the glory of God, says the ancient psalm. And we've unraveled a bit of that, seeing the fine-tuning of the fundamental forces of nature. It's something that's so striking to scientists that it demands explanation. And it seems to me that Arno Penzias hit it right. He is the Nobel Prize winner who discovered the microwave background on which a lot of the evidence for the Big Bang is based. He said astronomy leads us to a unique event, a universe which was created out of nothing, one with the very delicate balance needed to provide exactly the right conditions required to permit life, and one which has an underlying, one might say, supernatural plan. But I want to come to what I think is one of the fundamental arguments for theism. I take it this house believes in reason. That's why we're all here. And as a scientist, I believe that the universe is rationally intelligible. That is something that has struck some of the geniuses of science as demanding an explanation. Einstein said the only incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it's comprehensible. And Wigner talked about the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. How is it that a mathematician thinking in her head in here can come up with equations that seem to fit the universe out there? Well, how is it indeed? Because the irony of the atheist position here is evident. My atheist friends, and I have many of them, tell me that the driving force of evolution, which eventually produced our human cognitive faculties, reason included, was not primarily concerned with truth at all, but with survival. And we all know, ladies and gentlemen, what has often happened and still happens to truth when individuals or commercial enterprises or nations feel themselves threatened and struggle for survival. A leading philosopher, Alvin Plantinga of Notre Dame, says if atheists are right that we are the product of mindless, unguided natural processes, then they have given us strong reason to doubt the reliability of human cognitive faculties, and therefore inevitably to doubt the validity of any belief that they produce, including their atheism. Their biology and their belief in naturalism would therefore appear to be at war with each other in a conflict that has nothing at all to do with God. Yet my atheist friends still insist that it is rational for them to believe that the evolution of human reason was not directed for the purpose of discovering truth. And yet it is irrational for me to believe that human reason was designed and created by God to enable us to understand and believe the truth. Curious logic. By contrast with that, biblical theism asserts that ultimate reality is personal and intelligent, and the reason science works, and this was the motivating force that drove the great pioneers of science, is that the universe out there and the human mind in here that does the science are ultimately the product of the same intelligent divine mind. Human beings are made, we are told, in God's image, and that means that science can be done. That makes infinitely more sense to me as a scientist than atheism does. Now let me come briefly to ethics. Ethical behavior, like rational behavior, of course, does not itself require religious belief. This is consistent with the fact that humans are created in God's image as rational moral persons. But just as I suggest that rationality cannot be explained without the existence of God, so I dare to suggest that the existence of morality cannot be explained either. As modern science sprang from Judeo-Christian sources, so did the concept of human equality. Listen to atheist Jürgen Habermas, arguably one of Germany's leading intellectuals. He said that universalistic egalitarianism, from which sprang the ideals of freedom and a collective life and solidarity, the individual morality of conscience, human rights and democracy, is the direct legacy of the Judaic ethic of justice and the Christian ethic of love. This legacy, substantially unchanged, has been the object of continual critical appropriation and reinterpretation. To this day, there's no alternative to it. Everything else is just idle postmodern talk. And it seems to me he's hitting the core of something important, because the value of a human being on which such egalitarianism rests is based not on what the human being can do, but what she's made of, or how she's made in God's image. I never forget speaking on one of my many visits to Russia to a colleague in the Academy of Sciences. And he said, "You know, John, we thought we could abolish God and retain a value for human beings. We found we couldn't, and we murdered millions of them." And Alexander Solzhenitsyn has said, "If I'm asked, why is it that 60 million of my fellow countrymen were sacrificed?" He said, the answer is, we have forgotten God. Science, of course, marvelous as it is limited. Even a Nobel Prize winner, by analyzing a cake, cannot tell why it was made. But Aunt Matilda, who made it, can tell you. She can reveal it to you. But if she doesn't reveal it to you, you'll never know. And that brings me to my next evidence. It's the same with the universe. We can analyze it magnificently, but ultimately, if it has a maker, and I believe it has, only he can tell us what it's all about. And he's done so in the powerful narrative of the Bible, in particular in its analysis of the problem with humanity, not simply in terms of behavioral breakdown between people, but a vertical breakdown of trust between us and the Creator. The unique solution to that problem is not simply in terms of human ethical development, although that's very important, but in terms of something far deeper altogether. The restoration of the fractured relationship with God through the salvation he has brought through Jesus Christ. A radical relationship that empowers us to live ethically from God. And here we reach what for me is the chief evidence, not only for the existence but the nature of God. It is Jesus Christ. He it was who not only taught the golden rule, but embodied it, fed the hungry, healed the sick and suffering, and welcomed society's outcasts, brought honor and respect to the marginalized and ashamed. And he's brought forgiveness and peace to multi-millions around the world. He's able to do this, of course, because though he was a man, he uniquely never was only a man, but God become human. The central evidence for this startling claim is, of course, his historical resurrection from the dead that launched Christianity in the world. This is, of course, ladies and gentlemen, a crunch issue. If Jesus rose from the dead, death is not the end and atheism is false. If Jesus did not rise from the dead, Christianity is false. And I remember at Cambridge as a student listening to the brilliant Sir Norman Anderson, a legal expert, going through forensically the evidence from his legal perspective as a brilliant lawyer. And he said at the end of it, "The empty tomb, then, of Jesus forms a veritable rock on which all rationalistic theories of the resurrection dash themselves in vain." Just finally now, as I read the Bible, I do not only find intellectual satisfaction, but I find a great deal of that. I sense the voice of God speaking to me. You say, that's intensely personal. But ladies and gentlemen, we've been asked tonight about belief in God. And I want to strongly emphasize that God is not a theory, he's a person. And if the origination of me qua person is a personal God, then the most exciting thing really is there a possibility of getting to know God? And so I don't simply believe there is a God. I've come to know him and trust him. And I have strong reasons for doing so, because of Christ dying and rising again for me. And that has generated in me a sense of utterly unmerited forgiveness, acceptance, and peace. That has enabled me to face the ugly side of my own nature, and with God's help to do something about it. But it's enabled me to face something else. The hardest problem I face as a Christian is the problem of evil and pain. My niece getting a tumor at 22 that kills her. What do I say to my sister? And this is the hardest problem we face. But it seems to me that atheism here has no answer, because by definition, atheism believes that human death is the end, so there is no ultimate hope. But you see, ladies and gentlemen, we could stay here till midnight and beyond arguing, as has been done in this university for centuries, what a good God should, might, would, could, if not, possibly might, just could he not have done, and we'll get nowhere. So it seems to me there's another question we can ask, and it's this. Granted that life presents us with a double picture. We see some beautiful things. We see some ragged edges. We see hurt and pain, and we see joy. How can we come to terms with that? And it seems to me here is no simplistic answer, but a window into an answer, and it's this. If it is actually true that Jesus is, as I believe him to be, the Son of God, then we can ask the question, what is God doing on a cross? And the answer comes back at the very least. God has not remained distant from our human suffering, but has become part of it. And the other side of that is this. Because Jesus rose from the dead, he is going to be the ultimate judge. Now here's an irony, because atheism has no ultimate hope of justice by definition. The vast majority of people in the history of the world have died without justice and will die without justice. And if death is the end, then of course they have no hope of ultimate justice. But the promise in the New Testament, guaranteed by the resurrection of Jesus, is that he is to be the judge in the coming day. So, ladies and gentlemen, those are some of the reasons why I believe that God is real and worthy to be trusted. Thank you.
What I love about Christianity is that it is not just rooted in faith, which is trusting in the promises.
How's it going, Yahoo?
Hey, you got anything?
That was quite the speech.
Yeah, Lennox is cool. I like to find him every now and then. He has some good work with Richard Dawkins.
Oh, really?
Debate against him, yeah.
Wow. I don't know if I've seen that or not. Maybe I have, and I'm just not remembering. I don't know.
I'll come back around to it at some point. I was just going to go through some more clips. I was going to go to Jeff Durbin and Saitan Brigade unless you had something.
No, go for it.
I can, if you want to chime in, I'll just pause it.
Okay.
How you doing?
Welcome. I'm Jeff.
Hi, I'm Brenna.
Hello, Brenna. Hello. Okay, there you go. Good. Come on, you guys come on. And what's your name again?
Daniel.
Daniel, Brenna.
Yes.
This is Cy. I'm Jeff.
How you doing?
So, if you get like a little closer, we're gonna go into this mic here.
Okay.
So, women's rights. We're actually holding a conference next week, and so we wanted to talk to ASU college students.
Okay.
What's that?
What's that?
Okay. We'll just
So
go
like stand here.
Yeah.
Like I'm back here.
Like really famous.
Okay.
We'll be famous.
Is that better? You want me to stand over there? Okay. There? Cy is there? Okay, good. Okay, we're good?
Yeah.
Set. Okay. Daniel, Brenna. Okay, so we're holding a conference next week, and want to talk to ASU students about what you're taught, what you believe about women's rights. And so, obviously, the centerpiece of that big question, big in the last election especially, is women's rights for abortion.
Okay.
So, you guys are ASU students walking around?
Yeah.
What's your perspective?
Well, as a woman, I definitely believe you should have the right to make choices about your body.
Okay.
Just 100% believe that.
Okay.
I took a women's studies class too, and there's a lot of like talk about what what is okay to say about a woman and stuff, and I think it's all about context too when you're saying certain things to women. I believe how someone takes it, like information in too, as a woman. But in all honesty, I think everyone deserves equal rights. But
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Everyone deserves equal rights.
Yeah.
100%. Agree. Daniel, how do you feel about it?
About the abortion issue?
Abortion issue.
I would say it's more of like a pragmatic deal.
Okay.
You know? Like, to outlaw it would cause a lot of people to resort to like either having a child that they don't want or can't support, or both. And it would also cause people to have, or women in general, you know, to resort to like coat hanger type stuff,
unethical
like
methods.
Yeah, like
unsafe.
just unsafe methods, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I think ultimately it should be left to her choice, like completely. But there should be like constraints, like you can't do it after the third trimester.
Yeah, I definitely believe
Did you agree with that? So limit on the third trimester.
Yeah,
like no partial birth type deal.
Did he
It's
say
like if it's viable outside of the womb, it's like
trimester?
there's no real.
Did he say not after the third trimester?
Deal in the third trimester.
Yeah, I definitely.
I think ultimately it should be left to her choice, like completely. But there should be like constraints, like you can't do it after the third trimester.
Yeah, I definitely believe
Did you agree with that? So limit on the third trimester.
Yeah,
like no partial birth type deal. It's like if it's viable outside of the womb, it's like there's no real, like I don't see it as a good reason to abort, even if it seems like you're just kind of doing it just to do it.
Okay. Well, let me ask you about that. The third trimester. It happens a lot. People say, women's right to choose, and then we end up getting to the third trimester. People say, yeah, but not there. So what do you say to the person that says, isn't it inconsistent to say not there? What's your argument to say that it should be allowed in the third trimester, but not?
I think
it shouldn't be allowed in the third trimester, but it should be allowed early on. What would you say?
I think because I think you've had that much time to think about it, and you don't. It's an impulse decision if you're making it all of a sudden then right there.
When in the beginning or?
Oh no, in your third trimester, if you're trying to decide to abort, like that's kind of seems like an impulse decision more than anything else.
At the end?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to follow you. So it's an impulse decision at the end. Okay, and so how do you feel about that?
I feel like it's almost malicious at that point because it can survive, like if you take it to term. At the beginning, it's more like it's unviable. It's like if you do not want a baby in general, it's like you have 2 terms to decide that you don't want to have the kid, and it's like I think it goes back more to like I don't see it as a person in general, or like it's obviously human, but I don't see it as human, so it's like more acceptable to me to abort it at that point. But if you let it grow to where it can theoretically, or it can in reality like live, if you take it out either through like cesarean section or something, then it just seems like malicious, like pointless. It's like, well, they can live. Why would you like wait and then terminate?
Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, but so it's interesting. As we're hearing students talking about abortion all over campus, we generally hear kind of the same things. And what's interesting, and I'd like to hear what you guys say about this, is that it seems to me that over the last decade, especially, people who are a part of the abortion industry, people in academia, college students, will typically acknowledge today that what is in the womb from conception is obviously biologically human.
Right.
And you just said that it's obviously human.
Yeah, like
from
what
conception.
else would it be?
It's human, right? If we went dug deep, we see that's a human being, has his own DNA. But what we say is what you just said, but I don't see it as human. Like it's human, but I don't see it as really worthy of protection or anything like that. And so I find that interesting. How do you deal with that? How do we answer that conflict? That when someone says, say someone that's pro-life says, well, you grant that it's human, but you say that, but I'm not going to give it any protection until maybe it looks a little more like a human?
Until it could be physically separated from the mother and can still live, I would say.
Okay, how would you feel about that?
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like if you can take it out of the mother and it can thrive, then yeah.
Okay.
But if you take out of the mother, like,
and it dies, like, just by being disconnected from the mother, it dies, like then it's like I don't really consider it to be a person in and of itself.
This gets to a really interesting question. I'd love to see what you guys say about this. So it seems as though that's very consistent, by the way, in terms of like what is normally said about this. And so when you take what you just said about the mother's sort of like the life support for the child, right?
Basically.
And you say, well, if it's dependent upon the mother for life support, then we ought to be able to kill it. That's
right, because it's the mother's choice to either give it life support or not to give it life support.
So that's consistent across the board with what everyone says. What do you say in that point? The standard is it's a human being, but if it's dependent upon someone or something else, we ought to be able to kill it. So let's say if a human being gets into a car accident and is dependent upon life support, or if a person gets a brain tumor or something and they're dependent upon life support, are we able to just kill them at will because they're dependent upon something or somebody else?
well, don't we do the power of attorney at that time usually, or someone who's in charge decides whether to pull the plug or not?
True. But I guess in terms of the standard, if there's a human being that's dependent upon somebody or something else, the standard ought to be we can kill them.
Well, it depends, because I would say it depends on whether that person has lived long enough. Like, I guess whether they initially became viable to begin with. Like because that would, let's see, if you take a child out of the womb at the third trimester, so it's viable, but you've removed it, but then it still needs life support to live, obviously, to get to full term, then you would keep it on life support. You wouldn't just leave it there. It's kind of like
what
it needs to be alive first in order to even qualify. Like if it's never alive to begin with.
So breathe?
That's the question I would ask is, scientifically, biologically, at conception it's alive. right? At conception, there's life, DNA, it's biologically distinct.
Yeah, it's
Christians would say it's the image of God, it's life from conception. But what we're saying is when it gets out of the womb, and we have to give it life support, say for example, it's out of the womb now, right? But it's
couldn't he just have forgiven? Because this is a moral universe, Richard, and just forgiving doesn't make sense.
Here's a fascinating segment of debate between John Lennox and Richard Dawkins on science and God.
Do you really think that the creator of this magnificent edifice of the universe, the expanding universe, the galaxies, he really couldn't think of a better way to get rid of the sins on this one little speck of dust than to have himself tortured? He's the one who's doing the forgiving after all. Couldn't he just have forgiven?
Because this is a moral universe, Richard, and just forgiving doesn't make sense.
You mean he has to kill himself in order
He
to...
doesn't kill himself.
Or get himself killed, tortured.
God sends his son into the world to provide forgiveness and to provide a basis on which he can justly bring forgiveness to me. Now,
he has to get himself killed in order to do that.
Half a minute. We need to step back from this a little bit because it's actually a highly relevant topic. In your world, where is justice to be found?
Well, justice is a human construct of great importance in human affairs, and it's something that most of us have a sense of.
Did he just say feelings?
Yep. Feelings.
That's what I heard. Let's rewind it.
Most of us have sense of. That's
relevant topic. In your world, where is justice to be found?
Well, justice is a human construct of great importance in human affairs, and it's something that most of us have a sense of, which I think probably can be given some sort of Darwinian explanation, but I don't see where you're taking this.
Well, my question is there any...
A Darwinian explanation? What the heck is a Darwinian explanation?
Survival equate to justice.
What's that?
I don't know how survival equates to justice.
Yeah, he's saying
kind of like the survival and telling the truth thing. Like it's the same argument. Like there's no way.
It's a nonsense answer, or
it actually goes like contrary to popular belief. Darwinism is about eliminating the weak, elderly, and the sick. And
that's right.
That's Nietzsche. Like the first people Jesus tells you to take care of. So,
yeah, Friedrich Nietzsche would point that out. He would even go to the extent of saying that compassion and empathy are weaknesses in the human condition based on Darwinian theory, which he'd be right. There's no basis for making those value judgments as positive or good. It is just what it is.
Any ultimate justice?
There's a psychology term for that.
For
people who don't have emotions.
Oh, psychopathy or?
I forget. But anyway.
Yeah, I think it's a sociopath.
You see, you say this is petty. I'm saying I find myself in a world which is a broken world. I find myself in a world where there's massive injustice, where many people won't get it. We're so privileged. We live in Oxford and so on. We've got enough money to live on, etc., etc. But if there is no God, then there's no ultimate justice. And one of the things that the resurrection transforms for me from pettiness right into center stage is if this is true, then there's real hope that there be a rational evaluation and fair justice at the end of the world. But atheism doesn't give you that.
Okay, suppose there is no hope, suppose there is no justice, suppose there's nothing but misery and darkness and bleakness, suppose there is nothing that we would wish for, nothing that we would hope for. Too bad. That doesn't make it true just because God would make us feel good.
Well, of course it doesn't.
Well, then why do you bring that argument up?
Because I believe that there is evidence that it is true.
Lennox highlights.
Wait, he's saying if from a Darwinian perspective or his perspective, too bad, but he's the one who still argues those things. He's pointing out his worldview and then saying, why do you argue those things? And Lennox is saying, well, because from my worldview, those things do make sense. Meaning, value, and purpose do exist. And Dawkins is trying to flip the script on him, saying, I don't think those things exist. Why are you arguing them? That's a strange... This shows a disconnect there. Rewind.
Okay, suppose there is no hope, suppose there is no justice, suppose there's nothing but misery and darkness and bleakness, suppose there is nothing that we would wish for, nothing that we would hope for. Too bad. That doesn't make it true just because God would make us feel good.
Well, of course it doesn't.
Well, then why do you bring that argument up?
Because I believe that there is evidence that it is true.
Lennox highlights the idea of a just God, which is central to Christian teaching. Jesus' death on the cross was a display of God's own justice in paying the penalty of the sins of the world. Thereby, the cross also gives believers...
In other words, Dawkins says he believes those things. There's just misery, no justice, and so forth. Like, he'll make those claims arbitrarily, of course, because from his worldview, he doesn't provide the meaning to back up those claims. But then he'll argue against Christians and other people, saying you ought not to do this and do that and believe this and believe that, while holding that arbitrary stance that his worldview doesn't even provide meaning for the very things he argues. He doesn't get that. He's still...
Gotcha.
He just really doesn't understand that.
The assurance of ultimate justice and vindication in the life to come. While on the other hand, atheism just doesn't have any response to injustice faced by innocent people in this world. In Dawkins' own words,
too bad.
I don't believe in the resurrection just like that, because faith is based on evidence.
I've changed it around again. What you said before was that there is no hope without God, and it sounded...
Well, that's true. That's absolutely true. Okay. You just admitted it.
So I haven't admitted it. I said if that's true. Yes. So what? I didn't say it was true. But anyway,
but therefore the question to be decided then...
You see the little memes in the right corner?
Yeah.
What is that about?
You just admitted it. So
I haven't admitted it. I said if that's true, yes. So what? I didn't say it was true. But anyway,
but therefore the question
true, so
to be decided then is there a God, and has he revealed himself? And that's where again I think this pettiness needs to be pushed aside, because I can't get to know you as a person. You're not just a scientific object. I could look at you through a telescope or a magnifying glass. I could even dissect you and so on and so forth. But because you are a person, I cannot get to know you unless you're prepared to reveal yourself to me. So the fact that the claim of Christ to be the truth, to be God incarnate, that makes perfect sense to me, because if there is a God who invented this wonderful, marvelous universe with all its science and all the rest, then he has taken the initiative in getting to know us and revealing himself to us. And he's revealed himself to us at the level we can understand. We're persons, he's a person. That at least makes sense. So one of the very important questions to ask is that really true? Or is this simply myth and fantasy?
Well, myth and fantasy for me.
Yeah, well...
For the Christians, the incarnation of Jesus is the ultimate special revelation of God to humankind. The expression of his love in the person of Christ is the proof that God is not distant but desires to connect with humankind. In his book, the atheist New Testament scholar Bart Ehrman has to say this about those people who claim that Jesus never existed. The Messiah was supposed to overthrow the enemies, and so if you're going to make up a Messiah, you'd make up a powerful Messiah. You wouldn't make up somebody who was humiliated, tortured, and then killed by the enemies.
You could possibly persuade me that there was some kind of creative force in the universe. There was some kind of physical, mathematical genius who created everything. The expanding universe devised quantum theory, relativity, and all that. You could possibly persuade me of that. But that is radically and fundamentally incompatible with the sort of God who cares about sin, the sort of God who cares about what you do with your genitals, the sort of God who is interested, who has the slightest interest in your private thoughts and wickednesses and things like that. Surely you can see that a God who is grand enough to make the universe is not going to give a tuppenny cuss about what you're thinking about and your sins and things like that.
So you think that morality is not important?
Of course I don't think morality is not important. I'm a human being.
Sounds like you're saying it isn't important.
I'm a human being, and I live in a society of human beings, and within a society of human beings, morality is, of course, important. But we are one of billions.
What he's saying is, of course, important. He has no justification for that assertion. He's just saying that's the way it is. But when you break down his worldview, it's just feelings. He's saying, well, I can't really account for any of that.
Oh, you have a universe designed by finely tuned laws, but we're not going to have finely tuned laws for humans? Like, what?
Yeah,
that makes no sense.
He's saying things so like they're so obvious, but that's why Lennox is saying we have to step back because these things are relevant. You're just making all these assertions, and you're coming from a standpoint that you're just an evolved primate, and you're just molecules in motion. So how can you so flippantly and confidently say that these things exist and they're important? You can't even explain what either of those things are, importance or existence on a metaphysical level. You just focused on the material world.
Billions of planets on a huge scale, and a cosmic God who bothers about this kind of human scale is not the kind of God that is compatible with a scientific view of the universe. It's a medieval view.
But do you think that size is the measure of importance? Incidentally, on a logarithmic scale, you're about halfway between the atom and the universe. So if God thinks in terms of logarithms, your point falls, I think.
I mean, this is in a sense an emotional argument we've come into now. And
I don't think so at all.
I want to...
It's like all a projection. He's saying this is an emotional argument. That is his argument. It's from feelings. Yep. Richard Dawkins' full argument is emotion, and he's trying to lend that as though that's Lennox's position. It's interesting.
I want to if I were going to respect a God, it would be the kind of God the sort of God that Carl Sagan might have worshipped, not the sort of medieval God who fusses about sin, the obsession with sin and righteousness and sort of, I keep coming back to this word petty, and I stand by it.
It's intriguing that Dawkins does care about morality, but on what grounds does he base his morality? For every right and wrong, there has to be a moral judgment, and for him, he simply brushes it off as social construct. But he fails to understand that the Western social moral construct is founded on God and the Bible. The God of Christianity cares about sin so much so that he chose to send his son to die on behalf of sinful human race. We conclude with the words of John Lennox.
Because if God is real and has revealed himself, then it's through a relationship with him that we really can enjoy a full life, science included.
Yeah, it's wild when you really challenge the assumptions and presuppositions of these people, because they'll make arguments that sound good to the ear. And then you say, well, how do you account for that? And it just comes back to, well, it's just the way it is. It's just a social construct. It's just things we make up.
Yep.
My feelings,
bro.
But, I think they keep pressing the my feelings day after day, and we're going to get more feelings. And I think some people are just going to bite the bullet and say that, that's what we have. That's all we have is my feelings, and that's all you have, which they're still going to be in a problem because they can't justify that claim. That's all we have. It's just another assumption. But that's what's going to happen. We're going to get these accentuated and exaggerated feelings. Like, I think like what happened today with Will Freeman, like that's an extension of being frustrated with me saying all you have is your feelings, dude. Because it's been going on for a while, it wasn't just about today. It's been going on beforehand. And then when we clash or we come together in conversation, you get this like barrage of like feelings. Like, I'm going to overtalk you. I'm going to yell at you. I'm going to tell you you're stupid. And I'm just going to sit there and take and go, okay, are you done with your feelings? No, I'm not done with my feelings. I got more feelings to say. Like, that's what happened today. I think this is going to continue happening if we keep pressing this. And that's just the way it's going to go until they finally calm down or go away. Or what I hope is that they stop and say, well, now that I'm done yelling and screaming and throwing a fit, let me see if I can make sense of this. And they start to explore more and more and say, yeah, I guess I really can't account for all that. And they can see that they're being called out on the truth, that they are just arguing with their feelings. And I think it's key to remain calm through that, because you don't want to give them more ammunition to act silly. And sometimes you just have to take it. You know what I mean? Like, you just sit there and let it happen. But I don't really have my hopes up, but I think there's some people out there that might see it that way. They might say, well, I acted like a fool, and that person just sat there and didn't make me feel more foolish. Why did they do that? Why did they just sit there and let me do that? Maybe what they're saying is more relevant than I thought at first. That takes a certain type of person and a certain type of self-reflection, and of course, grace from God into repentance in order to move forward. So that's my hope for some of these people we interact with. But that doesn't mean I'm just going to let anyone come on the channel whenever they want and act that way. People will be not allowed to do that whenever they want to. And I mean, it might happen more often when I navigate around different channels, but what I'm saying is, like, I'm not going to open the door and let that guy in on the channel, like the poltergeist scene. We just don't let that guy in whenever he wants. But yeah, that's all I got for the moment. I might try to wrap this up here because I've been climbing down by the hour. Like, I think Sunday closed out at 4, and then 3 on Monday, 2 last night. Now it's 1 o'clock. Trying to get back on schedule here. These late hours.
Yep, fair enough.
My schedule's getting thrown off. That's why I was saying I hope nobody appears in the memo tomorrow, because what I've been doing is I've been throwing up the sniper stream when he puts us in his memo, which gives him a little bit of power if that's what he's wanting to do. To try to point out, like, if you're going to bash on Christians every day, that's what you're going to do. But when you start to put our names in the memo and have people repeat it or chant it in cultish behavior, I think that's a problem. But I don't know. You actually handled most of that today until I went in there and took the chiding. I didn't get to watch it because I was busy, but you were playing at a lower volume and commenting on top of it.
It's kind of nice whenever I can just say what's going on in my head out loud. So
you kept it going live, or did you pause it?
I tried to keep it going live and just could go with like a real rolling live commentary.
Yeah, because you might have sort of instigated that to some degree. People might have been watching you do that. And then popped over there, and then when I popped in, they're like, "Oh, I'm going to give this guy hell," because they see it as us working in unison, which obviously they have a valid argument. You're doing it on my channel and so forth, so it's fine. But
right, but it's not like, I don't know, we make plans. I don't know JG like that.
Yeah, we're not making plans, but that's what I'm saying outright tonight. If anyone's listening, like the reason I'm giving the reason I'm doing it. Like I was just trying to do it as it came along, but now I'm actually giving the reason I'm doing it. It's because he's putting our names in the memo. So if anyone's listening and they want to give that message back to Ace, that is the reason I'm doing it. It's not just because I want to snipe his streams. I think that he's calling for this, and if he wants to wise up and make it less personal. But I also get the feeling that he wants to make it personal and he enjoys this, which I'm saying it's taken up a lot of my time to play this game with him. And when I did get on there with him alone, he let me talk to him for about 4 minutes before he kicked me.
Yeah, he's seemingly quite afraid of you.
Well, I enjoy it more you going in there than me at this point. As you know, I have like over 100 episodes of me talking to him, so I'd much rather you talk to him. Not because just because I've done it so much. And we have a little bit of a different angle. You're willing to go more in the scriptures with him than I am. So I think that makes you more welcome. But they're just gonna like do their whole like anti-Jew thing with you, I guess. Some of them.
Yeah, I just kind of slap on a label and run away.
Yeah. But you know, if you keep pulling Paul back to the Old Testament, that's great. There's not much they can do about that except distract you, which you're not easily distracted. They just move around, but you can basically tie back whatever they pull up.
Yeah. I don't know though. I don't know. I don't get the feeling Ace is gonna let me talk very much. Especially after how everything else went today.
Well, he can't.
I mean, I don't mind trying, but yeah, I don't know.
I mean, you can't really win. That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah,
like
that's true. I don't
the title of
see
this episode. I mean, God is making you do it wrong, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's it.
I mean, I don't know. I guess my opinion of winning is just somebody, one person at least sees that.
Yeah.
There's some red flags on the play.
Yeah, that's what it has to be. It's not like, oh, well, gee, I hadn't thought of it that way. I guess I'll reconstruct my whole philosophy of 40 years and shut the channel down. Like, no, we know that's not.
Yeah, no. I don't think that would ever happen. Yeah, that's not my goal. I mean, like, I hope he repents. Like, don't get me wrong, but like, yeah, you know, if one person catches something that we say and gets saved from that hole, I'll be happy.
Yeah, I guess we get occasionally we can get somebody popping over here say, "Oh, I hadn't thought about it that way. I saw you talking to him today." I guess occasionally that stuff happens and it kind of brings it into light. But I think a lot of stuff.
I mean, there was at least like 2 or 3 of them from there over here watching because they figured out what I was doing.
Yeah.
Like read off some of my comments or something, but yeah.
Yeah, because you're there watching it and like you can see the commentary on their end too.
Yeah. I didn't even know you were going over there. I was totally surprised. I just was like, oh, who's that? There's somebody new in the stream. I guess we'll figure out who that is when they start talking.
Yeah, I have to do it from the other account, and unfortunately, it's compromised because the volume is low on the mobile device, so it sucked. I couldn't even what I said barely came through, which is they probably love that.
It seemed like it was okay.
I tried to rewatch it and it was like, I couldn't barely hear it, but I could, but just barely. But yeah, I saw a big gang of people over there, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna pop in, feeling kind of bold. But it's dominated.
Yeah, they were not feeling bold. They scattered.
They did too. Like it was like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah,
like
like
three of them were
Ace let you in, immediately leaves the computer. Like one person leaves, two person leaves, and then like 3, 4, 5. Yeah, and then it's pretty much just
There's
will.
the demands. This is what you're going to talk about. Do it now. Do it now. I mean, I had things I could have said, but I was just like, I'm not going to just talk about what you tell me I have to talk about. You know,
Right.
I'm not playing that. What the hell?
Yeah. I even like commented live. I was like, you can't talk about Jesus on Ace's channel.
What's your ultimate authority?
You can't even talk about the scary words from Paul.
Well, yeah, only in the context of mockery.
Right.
Like you ask, like, what's your ultimate authority? They're like, basically, like, I'm the authority over you right now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm about to exercise my free will and mute you, put you in the back room.
Yeah,
I'm offended that you interrupted me.
The idea is just to get you marginalized and get you emotional, because then you're on their level. So you just sit there.
Oh man, remember whenever he wouldn't let people say the word I?
I think so. Yeah, he went through a little thing like that.
Yeah. Oh man.
We're talking
I don't
about
know what
God.
made me remember that, but I just remember that. Yeah. He was pointing that at us.
I can appreciate that to a degree, but it's kind of funny.
But yeah, whenever he says things like, I don't like it when you interrupt me.
Every now and then I enjoy something he says, but then it gets ruined quickly after by something else.
Yeah. I mean, a broken clock is right twice a day.
Yeah, it's something like that. It's like, oh, that's cool what he just said. And then it's like, ugh. It's basically that what I was trying to get at is like I was asking, what are you guys bound by over here? And the answer is that there is no dedication or commitment there, except if you dislike and want to ridicule Christians or followers of Christ, you're welcome over here. That's what it is.
I think you might be right.
That's what I've gathered over the years. That is what is the commitment, if there is any commitment. But it's also become the memo now, like the memo thing. Like he's playing it well too. He's like, oh, I know they don't like the memo, so I'm going to go overboard on reading it. But some of those guys over there are probably like behind the scenes going, come on, dude, your memo's like, you don't have to read it 7 times. Like, let's just calm that down. Like they're probably turning the volume down at least.
I had to, man.
I mean, come on.
I think I tried going through it 3 times, and then after that, I was like, okay, I'm going to save us all the trouble and just turn down the volume.
Yeah, I have no idea what his memo was about today because I didn't listen to it once. So,
oh my, yeah.
He's like, it'll get in there. I'm going to get it in there one way or the other. Well, read my memo. Drink my memo. It's purple flavored. Drink it up.
I mean, that might have. Yeah, it was a lot of brainwashing.
Straight up.
I'm not even sure how many videos I've seen 7 times. Or like sermons I've watched 7 times.
Yeah, I've watched some stuff 7 times, but it's in a period of pauses, like weeks go by or months go by and I revisit it. I've watched the video on the number 7 times. That's a good one. Where is the number 7? Jay Dyer talks to an atheist about that. That's a great conversation. It's hard to absorb. People think the number 7 is in the 7 coconuts or the 7 rocks once they're counted and so forth. It's a good one because it really gets to the idea of a metaphysical reality that's consistent but doesn't exist in time and space, that's demonstrated or brought forth through symbols and different methods used to demonstrate what already exists. And the argument is that it's immaterial, and that's the point. That to get people away from materialism, people who assume numbers and number theory, they're stuck in this idea that like 7 came into existence when someone counted 7 things, and that the 7 exists within the things or the set of things. And you start saying, well, where is it? Is it identical to the set? Or is the set a demonstration of something that doesn't actually exist within the set, but exists in reality? It's a great mind bender. It's very relevant. Right. And I had to keep watching it, and it still slips away from me to this day.
Like 7 would be like information or an idea or thought. And then what we see in reality is just a demonstration of it. Is that kind of what the argument is?
Yeah. Like you wouldn't, like when you get into discussing it, they say, well, 7 exists. And they say, yeah, well, it exists where? They say it's a construct in the mind that we discover the idea and then it's in our mind. But then you say like, well, the idea of 7 in your mind is not identical to the idea of 7 in my mind. It's something independent of mind, because the molecules in your mind are not identical with the molecules in my mind. Stuff like that comes up, and it starts making people think like, yeah, that's true. We both hold the concept of 7. We both can demonstrate it and use symbols to identify with it or instantiate it. But the idea itself of 7 in separate minds is not identical, because our minds are not identical. They're not identical matter. It's beyond matter. It's an interesting one. I'm going to play it for the close. I'll pause it if you want. Where are you? Where is the number 7? Dang it.
Demolish the Christians, bro. Demolish the Christians. I just demolished the Christians, bro. Meet me in World of Warcraft later for an after party.
So I'm not so much into demolishing and such, but I am an atheist, and I came across your video recently from a friend, and I found some of your argumentation interesting.
Okay.
I had a question regarding epistemology or perception. Are you at all familiar with like the neo-realist tradition, or the more direct realist tradition along the lines of like William James and such, and how they would consider things like logic and stuff within the structure of reality and more functional in a process and not an immaterial entity? And do you have a response to that?
Yes, I am. So I think the problem with this position is that it doesn't account for the things that we need and expect and actually see
logic, words, meaning, concepts, math, doing, right? So, for example, I don't see how something that's an immaterial invariant thing could be a process. And so if it's not itself a process, or if it's not a social construct, or if it's not itself identical to matter, then what is it? And once we try to identify or reduce any of these things to matter, or when we don't want to give an account for immaterial invariant objects, or we want to say that the mind is identical to matter, we're actually placing ourselves in impossible positions. And so you're welcome to make argumentation along those lines if you want to.
Okay, so what if we conceived of okay, well, first of all, I don't believe in immaterial things, so I'd try and conceive of everything materially because that's more parsimonious. But say if we had a sort of definition of mind along the lines of a set of interrelationships between material things, and then we consider things like logic, because obviously I wouldn't say logic's immaterial, I'd say it's a material thing, but it's not an entity, right? Because an entity, there's no like entity, like you couldn't cut open a brain or any sort of reasoning being and find an entity of logic, right? I think we both agree on that. But, if you considered things like logic and like experience and all these things that you would label as immaterial, instead of as immaterial entities that exist in some sort of universal category, instead they were just relationships between material entities, or like complex sets of interrelationships between material things. And then you could kind of conceive of it that way. What would you respond to that?
Yeah. So my question would be, and as I was listening to you talk, I wrote down 3 things that I would like you to clarify if you would. So when you talk about a set of things, and when you talk about relationships, and when you talk about complex sets, when you talk about the things, I assume you mean when you pick out objects in the world, what is the set that classes those set of things?
Okay, well, I guess it would depend on what we're talking about. So let's.
Well, I'm asking you because this is what you said.
Experience, as an example.
Well, I mean,
so
you said thing. Hold on.
Oh, sorry,
So, are you talking about objects in the world? That's what I assume you mean by things. You said relationships between those things in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what is this thing that you're calling a set of those things?
What is this thing that I'm calling a set of things?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, it's a set of relationships, as in like. Okay, because I guess what you're trying to say is you're trying to say.
Okay, so the set is the hold on. So the set is is the relationship.
Sorry?
Is that what you're saying? The set is identical to the relationship?
Well, no, because like you could have a bunch of individual relationships, and then a set of them is just a collection of relationships.
Okay, so when we talk about a series of objects, right, that we're calling a coconut or whatever, you're saying that is a set of 7 coconuts. Right, there's 7 of these things, and that set we're calling coconuts, right?
Kind of. I guess like for example, if you're looking at numbers and you wanted to find an empirical example of numbers, you could find 7 coconuts and then see the relationship between them of 7 different entities.
Okay, so hold on. So you said the set. So the set is identical to the relationship now, in this case, in this example.
I'm not sure I fully understand what you mean, but
from
what I'm hearing,
you said, I thought that's what you said. The set here, in the case of the coconuts, is the relationship between the coconuts, and there's 7 of them.
Right, that would be one set of relationships, sure, yep.
Okay, so 7 is identical to the material components that make up the 7 coconuts?
Identical is not exactly the word I'd use. I would say that's sort of like an instantiation of that relationship.
Oh, so there's a distinction between the set and the individuals, such that the set is instantiated.
Well, in the sense, like, yes, because there's like an individual example of it, and then you could find that example elsewhere. I don't think there's like
what is instantiated. Because you said you're a materialist.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not actually anything instantiated. I mean, in your mind, you might perceive an instantiation. But in the world, there's nothing instantiated.
Right. Okay. Sorry. I'm probably not going to be using, like, I'm only in like my bachelor's degree level of education, so my use of terminology might not be perfect. So I apologize for that. But in terms of, like, I would consider these sort of relationships to be found within the structure of reality, within the structure of material reality, without a necessity for immaterial reality, in the sense that you can find empirical examples of these different, like,
okay, so
logical categories.
What is instantiated?
What is instantiate?
Mm-hmm. No, what is instantiated in the 7 coconuts?
The relationship of 7.
Okay, so the set is the relationship.
Sure.
So what's instantiated is identical to the objects there.
It's found within that structure, yeah.
Okay, where in those molecules do you find 7?
Within, so it's not an
Molecule. So what's instantiated is identical to the objects there.
It's found within that structure, yeah.
Okay, where in those molecules do you find 7?
It's found within that structure, yeah.
Okay, where in those molecules do you find 7?
Within, so it's not an, see, the thing is, it's not an entity, right? You're not finding like an entity example.
Okay,
You're
so
finding a relationship
instantiated,
between multiple sets
you said instantiated, that's a metaphysical term. You said it's in the objects themselves. What is
in the relationship between the objects.
Okay, but
not in, like, it's not an entity, it's a relationship.
Okay, so you're saying that the set is identical to the relationship between the objects.
Not quite.
Okay, but that's what you said, and then you said it was instantiated. So I'm asking you, what's instantiated when what's in front of us is molecules?
Right. So the difference is, like, and maybe I'm not wording it.
So you think look, let me ask it this way: the number 7 is literally identical to 7 coconuts?
No, not quite. But it's
Okay,
not identical to the coconuts. It's the relationship between the coconuts. It's not the entity of the coconuts.
I just asked you if the set was identical to the relationship, and you said yes and no. So what distinguishes those 7 coconuts to the right and the 7 bananas to the left, if 7 is merely a set of relations?
Because of their identity as separate, like coconuts.
That's begging the question, because I'm asking you what you said is because it's instantiated. Yeah, but it's also instantiated in the 7 bananas on the left. But the number 7, you said the number 7 is identical to the relationship of 7 coconuts. So if it's identical, then it's
the relationship
different.
that could be found within sets of many different 7.
Oh, okay. So it's now you have an instantiation that is not identical to the relationship.
Right.
Okay, so now you refuted yourself. Exactly. Because you said...
Can you explain how I refuted myself? Sorry.
Is the 7 coconuts on the left identical to the 7 bananas on the right?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Is the 7 coconuts on the left identical to the 7 bananas on the right?
No.
Okay, so how are they both, quote, 7?
Well, they're 2 different examples of a relationship of 7 different
Okay,
items.
where's the 7?
They're 2 different types of
Where's
items.
the 7? So they're instantiations of a type or a set, but you said the set was identical to the relationships. But I've given you 2 different sets of 7.
Right, so it would be 2 different examples of 7.
Okay. Examples are instantiations of something higher. Where's the 7? What is the thing that is the same thing between the bananas on the left and the coconuts on the right? The same thing between... What is the thing that is the same thing between the bananas on the left and the coconuts on the right? The same... What is the thing that is the same thing between the bananas on the left and the coconuts on the right? You said the relationship. No, again, the relationship is just the 7 things, according to you. So what is shared between those 7 things and the other 7 things?
The amount?
Okay, so right, that's circular. That's begging the question because that's the set. That's the number 7.
That experience of
So again, so right, so that's self-refuting, right? Because you just said that the number 7 is a set that's actually in the world. Now you're saying it's just experience that would be in your mind.
Well, I'd consider mind also to just be a relationship between, say, an organism and
Okay,
its
but that's
environment.
not going to answer the problem of the 7 coconuts. This just makes it worse for you because now you're appealing to something that is neither of those things, and we don't even know if you have a way to access the external world, right? I mean, are you aware of that problem in philosophy? That like, is there?
Oh yeah, I'm okay. So that problem itself would be based off, because I understand you refer a lot to Hume as sort of like the pinnacle example of like the empiricist thought, and obviously he was one of the major proponent of skepticism, right?
Yeah,
Though,
and so has that whole that whole tradition has continued that, right?
Yeah. Well, there is a line of empirical thought that is based off that, because that's sort of takes the framework of like the Cartesian and Kantian sort of indirect representationism of reality, right? So that's all like that's built on the fact that, you know, as Galileo kind of laid out, you have primary and secondary properties, and then Descartes would have said that these secondary properties are radically distinct from the primary, and that exists in the mind and so on.
Locke says that
so
too, right?
Hume based his skepticism on the Cartesian idea that we experience reality indirectly, whereas I wouldn't hold that position. I would hold a position that we do experience reality.
Direct realism,
like a naive realist position.
It doesn't get you out of the dilemmas because that you hold that doesn't provide a justification. I mean, I'm glad that you hold that. I believe in a form of realism as well. But that's not the same thing as a justification for the belief in external world. That's a position. What's the justification for that position? And again, that's a different. That's a
parsimonious, simple explanation. Then
okay, but that's a presupposition. So why is just because something is appears to be simple, is it therefore more rational or the one that we ought to choose?
Because if we chose something that's a more complicated,
that's begging the question. 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 Begging the question. How do we know that we ought to choose what's more simple? Because we shouldn't choose what's complex. Begging the question.
How should we... Oh, sorry, can you repeat the question?
You have a presupposition that the simple explanation is the one that we ought to choose. What is the justification for that belief and for the ought? And you said, because we shouldn't choose complex things.
So the justification for why... Well, I guess that's kind of just repeating myself.
Anyway, look, dude. Where is the number 7 in this transaction? Would you agree that you and I are talking about the number 7 right now?
Yes.
Okay. Is the number 7 in my head identical to the number 7 in your head?
Let me think about.
Are the molecules in my head the same as the molecules in your head?
No, they would be two different.
And you believe the number 7 is identical to molecules? You said it was instantiated. You said it was instantiated. You said it was. You said it was instantiated in
between the molecules, not the molecules.
And you said the set was identical to the relationship and is identical to the 7 coconuts.
Well, that's the thing. I don't consider it identical. I consider it that you have the entities, like, and you can have a certain amount of entities.
Okay, what's an entity? Okay, so this is metaphysical language. Where do you get a justification for all this metaphysical baggage that you're using here? Entities?
Okay, so from my understanding, and to be fair, I still have plenty to learn. I'm still learning a lot about this kind of stuff. I would consider that the metaphysics, like I agree that metaphysics is valuable and useful. My question is to be, why does, like, I don't understand the need for immaterial things.
Okay. Is the number 7 is the number 7
the structure of reality?
Is the number 7 in my head identical to the number 7 in your head?
No, because we have two different experiences of that relationship.
Okay. So what is the common thing between the two experiences? Yeah, exactly.
The sort of like
this is
rule
what
that
you
see within
you
reality
can't
every time we experience.
That's not an answer. That's not an answer. What is the common thing between what's in my head and your head, since you just said they're different? But you said 2 minutes ago that we're both talking about the same number 7. This is Philosophy 101, Plato. Did you take a Plato class?
I've read some of Plato, not enough to.
So Plato 101 would be one in many. Do you know about the problem of the one in many?
No.
All right. So you got cheated in your education. You got sold a bill of goods, and you didn't learn the basics. I'm not trying to be mean to you, but
I'm not
when we
currently
read
in a
Plato,
philosophy
see, this is what is produced in the universities is people that don't know fundamental questions in epistemology and metaphysics, like the one in the many. So all I'm doing is rehashing a Platonic dialogue with you.
Mm-hmm. And I'd be happy to look into that more, because right now, as I said, I didn't want to have like a debate or anything. I'm just trying to get some of the questions I need to research myself, So.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to debate to come on here. So that's true.
Okay, cool.
And I respect that.
Yeah, I mean, I joined this Discord to, challenge my own perspectives and see, some of the stronger arguments for perspectives that I don't hold, so that I can then go, research them and learn more and produce a better argument.
Right. So I would say that reducing conceptual things, invariant things, abstract things to physical things is self-refuting by virtue of what we just talked about in the last 20 minutes. That would be my argument against what you're talking about.
There's a lot of big words in there.
Yeah, I don't know if he extracted anything out of that, but that's one of those things I've watched many times, 7 times, maybe more now, because it's just very complex, very deep, very valuable. So I don't know if you got anything out of that, but maybe we can revisit it again too, because it's a great conversation.
Sure.
Is the number 7 the same in my head as it is in your head? Where is it? Where is that elusive 7?
Great question.
Yes, but I think I got to call it. Try to get back.
We should get out of here.
All right, man. Great to talk to you today, and I'll see you again soon. Take care, brother.
You too.
Good night to all out there. We shall see you next time, which likely will be soon. God bless, grace and peace. Have a good night.